Hello, everyone. I am Shao-Hai. The fundamentalist modernist controversy has quite a few noteworthy events, and tonight we will discuss a noteworthy sermon entitled "Shall the Fundamentalists Win?" by Harry Emerson Fosdick. First, I'll give you some background on Pastor Fosdick. He was educated at Colgate University and Union Seminary. According to Mark Knoll, Fosdick was probably the best-known preacher after Dwight Moody and before Billy Graham. Fosdick was a liberal evangelist, and at the time of his 1922 sermon, he was a pastor of New York's First Presbyterian Church. Fosdick has the foresight to mass-produce and spread this particular sermon afterwards. Knoll states that 130,000 ordained Protestants received this sermon, thus creating a sensation. Now, before we talk about the effects of this sermon, we should first discuss the sermon itself. On May 22, 1922, Pastor Harry Emerson Fosdick delivered a sermon called "Shall the Fundamentalists Win?", which primarily argued against the intolerance of fundamentalist Christians. First, he cites Acts chapter 5, where he discusses how many Jewish leaders wanted to slay Peter and the apostles for preaching about Jesus. But one Jewish leader, Gamaliel, spoke in opposition to the majority, stating that if Peter and the apostles spoke falsely, then their message would naturally die. However, Jewish leaders could not kill these apostles, because if they were telling the truth, then the leaders would be against God's will. Fosdick uses that story to compare the fundamentalists to the majority of Jewish leaders in Acts chapter 5, and that the fundamentalists are intolerant of any differing liberal views on Christianity. Now, fundamentalists do not want to kill these liberal Christians. They do want to kick them out of the church, however. Pastor Fosdick then discusses some of the differences in opinion for various theological issues. In his time, more and more information were being discovered regarding science and history. This led to the questioning of such aspects as Jesus being born from a virgin, the historiography of the Bible, and the second coming of Jesus. Now, Fosdick did not explicitly state his direct opinions on such matters. Instead, Fosdick argued that the fundamentalist Christians' opinion on such subjects were so rigid that they would be intolerant of any other differing idea. This type of tyrannical discourse would drive away not only Christian scholars, but young people as well. Fosdick asserts that young people would prefer the open invitation from scientists rather than the fundamentalists' rigid interpretation. Now, just because Pastor Fosdick argued against fundamentalists did not mean that he supported all liberal modernistic Christians. Fosdick tries to be objective. After all, commitment to objectivity and honesty is essential to historical investigation. He noted that there are also many intolerant liberal Christians as well, that they are not any better than the closed-minded fundamentalist Christians. Fosdick also discussed how many liberal thinkers in general lack spiritual depth. However, just because some of the modernist Christians had faults didn't mean that they should be kicked out of their respective Christian churches. Fosdick concludes that the fundamentalists would not prevail because their solution is not valid. He claims that their intolerance is not sustainable for a healthy congregation, and that he is confident that nobody in his congregation has a hint of such fundamentalist thoughts. Following the sermon, news spread quickly of Fosdick's words. This was helped by 130,000 ordained Protestants receiving a copy of his sermon. Fundamentalists were not pleased with the pastor, so the American Presbyterian Church held a general meeting discussing what to do in response. This was reported in the Washington, D.C. Evening Star on Thursday, May 24, 1923, with the headline, "Liberalists Lose at Church Parley." The General Assembly, led by religious figures including William Jennings Bryan, decided three things. 1. Rejecting all recommendations made by liberal Presbyterians. 2. That anyone pastoring in the First Presbyterian Church in New York must conform to Presbyterian doctrine. And 3. To launch an investigation into Harry Emerson Fosdick's religious views. This is considered a fundamentalist victory by the Evening Star because not only did the Presbyterians reject all recommendations from the liberal Christians, but they also provided a way to kick Fosdick out of the Presbyterian Church. But these decisions also provided a victory for Fosdick, because what the fundamentalist Presbyterians did can be considered intolerant of any view other than the Presbyterian view. Fosdick's sermon was an important event within the fundamentalist modernist controversy. His sermon was widely spread, there was media coverage, and the fundamentalist Presbyterians showed their intolerance for Fosdick's words. As for Pastor Fosdick, well, before he could be fully investigated, he left the Presbyterian Church and joined the Baptists. And I say bully for him. I would have left too if I were in his shoes.